Boom. There we go. Okay, I am waiting for the rest of the committee to join. For anyone who's at all interested in this, I can't start the meeting because I'm not a trusted device. So that's why we ended up where we were. And Susan, who just joined, you have to use your last name, please. I'm still waiting for the rest of the committee. Okay, there you go. Okay. Kim, who just joined, you have to be in on first and last name, please. Susan, who is just a first name, I think you came in as Susan Lazarus, so I'm removing the Susan. There we go. There we go. Still waiting for the rest of the committee. Oh boy. Technology 1, Denise 0.
Denise, who's missing?
Everybody but me. Barry Rector. I can admit you, Barry. So yeah, so far we're missing Jason, Peter, Dave, Barry, Brooke. Oh. Kim, who I don't know who you are, and we need a last name, please. Jim, thanks for changing it from Jay Garrels to Jim. Peter Schaefer still can't get in. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm getting a little bit of email that people are waiting for the host.
Yes, and I don't have anybody sitting here in my waiting to be let in. So I have 28%. participants, and I don't have anyone waiting to be let in.
Maureen, if you're there, can you check?
I'm the host, but I don't have anybody waiting.
It could be slow.
Yeah. So their screen says waiting for the host, and I am the host, and I don't see anyone waiting for the host.
Denise, it's John. You might want to ask them to just disconnect and reconnect just in case.
Okay. Thanks, John. And oh, John, you need a last. Oh, there's SP. I don't know who SP is. Maureen, are you still on? You're on mute, Maureen.
I'm going to try and reclaim host and see if I can allow anybody else in.
Okay.
So I am now the host.
And see if you can see.
And I don't have anybody waiting.
Okay. And Jason now can't make it. Jason's just left.
Are there people that you know of who are having problems entering?
Mm-hmm. It's Barry Rector, Dave Iverson, Peter Schaefer, Brooke Moore.
Oh, that's all.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody who should be on the call. And Jason just said he has to leave. Brooke just resent a link to everyone.
There she is.
Okay, if you could let her in. Oh, there's Brooke. Yay.
There's Barry.
There's Barry. Great. SP, you have to be in with your first and last name, please. So please change your initials to first and last name.
So what happened is the invite we got had a different link from the agenda. So I pulled that link from the agenda.
Okay.
And texted it.
Yeah, this has been fun so far.
Yeah, it's always
I'm here.
There we go. Progress. Just waiting for Dave. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the script and open the meeting while we wait for Dave to join.
Dave's on.
He's on, yeah.
Dave's on. Okay. And now my dogs are going crazy. So, you know, it's just today's that day. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 3rd meeting of the pre-group short-term rental working group. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. And not that that's going to make much of a difference. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, chair for this pre-work group. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons who anticipated on the agenda are present. You can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. This is just not my day. Brooke Moore,
I am here.
Peter Schaefer,
I am here also.
Dave Iverson,
Here.
Barry Rector. Barry was here. Did
He's
Barry
muted.
leave?
He's muted.
Barry, can you also take your video on so you'll show up on the first screen for me, please, as we're up to 2 screens? Okay. All right, good afternoon. This open meeting of the pre-work short-term rental working group meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, we're convening by Zoom, and please note the meeting's being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I'm turning to the first agenda item, but before we do so, I'm going to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker. After that, I will ask the members to provide any comments, questions, or when we don't have motions, we're not that group. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And if we take any votes, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay, so the meeting, I've called the meeting to order. I've announced that there's an audio and video recording. And so the first, the first item on our agenda today is to finalize the short-term rental working group framework, which I will screen share and pull up. Okay, screen share, boom. Share, once I got that part done. There we go, okay. So, folks, for the public comment will be at the end of the meeting. So there will be no public comment until I open it. So for the next 3 items, then there's no public comment during this time. Okay, thank you. Okay, so each group has gone through this, the select board, the planning board, and the finance committee. We've incorporated all the suggestions that came from each group. And so this is the final document. And I'm looking to the members who've seen this before to see if there's any questions or comments you have. Otherwise, I suggest we call this the final document to be published and set up as the framework for the short-term rental working group once it gets constituted. So I'm going to actually ask you one by one to make sure that we have, so I'll start with you, Brooke, as you're the first one I can see.
I'm comfortable with the framework.
Thank you. Peter?
As am I.
Dave?
Me as well.
Thank you. Barry?
Just one thing I want to bring up real quickly. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. No, I was having a few problems trying to get in. I'm off island sitting in Panera at the moment, trying to utilize their internet. Just one thing, as we got toward the end of that document, which is section, hang on for a moment, sorry. There we go, section 8, thank you. There's just, the only thing I was concerned with, which we've kind of discussed at the planning board, is making sure that any of the items in section C were just well documented in terms of what that means. All too often, I think we see, especially on the planning board, Nantucket's unique situation. And that's thrown out with just kind of as a very generic sense of what that is. And yeah, I mean, every community is unique, let's be serious. But especially with these items, that somehow that there's criteria set for it, as well as that there's documentation to be able to substantiate why we're saying something. So that was really my only concern with that. Maybe that can be borne out by whoever the moderator is. That those kind of things will have to really take place. That the generic things that we're used to reading in the first 3 or 4 paragraphs about Nantucket can't be that generic. They have to document why certain things are happening.
I believe. Thank you for that, Barry. That's a good add. I think that will be really covered under B. So because all the contributing data points will be items that are correlated to item C. So I think does that cover it for you?
Yeah, I think it should. I just want to make sure those two things are very intimately linked together in terms of that, though.
Okay.
That's really my only concern.
Okay.
I will have one other thing for you in terms of composition of the board itself, of the working group. So I'll hold back any other comment until we get to that stage.
Well, that was way back up here. So
yeah, it was. I'm sorry. Like I said, this has been kind of a challenge to get into this meeting, so I apologize.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm a little concerned here about transparency that may be going on. And I don't think town council is necessarily address something, but I have a major concern with Act Now. I will preface this whole thing by saying I think that I definitely they need to be on there. There's no question about it. I feel strongly about that, just like Act Together should be there as well too, because they've been the main parties kind of going back and forth about how this specs out for the community. But with Act Now, I guess I'm a little troubled in terms of whether this has to be brought before the Ethics Commission by town council, but they are actively engaged in a lawsuit against the town for STRs. And not only is that engagement taking place, they're financially supporting that engagement. As well, it seems as though one of their board members, which I find a little troubling as well, is actually enjoying the financial privilege of them assisting with that lawsuit as well too. So I'm surprised something hasn't come out. And like I said, I hadn't seen anything from town council. Not to try to throw a monkey wrench in the system, but I want to make sure, we've gone through great length of trying to vet who's going on here and how that was going to happen. And town council found some great things, but I just want to make sure that's in the clear with that lawsuit taking place. And like I said, one of their active board members is actually in that lawsuit process.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump ahead. Thank you. I'm going to jump ahead for a moment to this document, which I sent all of you. I don't know if you can see it. Can you all see it? Is it big enough to be read for everybody? So, sorry, folks. I'm just, honestly, this is like my 4th meeting today. That's been quite a technical challenge for me. So, what I was suggesting to the group is that when we get to the appointment process, when people are nominated, and I think everyone has to go through this, not just say Act Now or Nantucket Together, or even the planning board or the finance committee propose someone, whilst the evaluation process is really for the 3 at-large members and the alternate. I think it behooves us as a group to make sure that we answer these questions about everyone who's on this committee. And the last one has attested to having no conflict of interest in regards to STRs. So we would have to know that whoever the person is, they have no conflict of interest. And then I would leave it up to town council to say, is the current lawsuit being supported by Act Now? Is that a conflict of interest for the Act Now member, yes or no? And I would leave it to town council rather than us debate it. So, so let me just run through this quickly. Are they a year-round resident? Yes or no? Seasonal resident, obviously the two are mutually exclusive. Do they own properties? If so, how many? And I'm using my Susie Cheese here as my example. Owns a business, Susie's Cheeses, owns an STR, 1, lives next to 3 of them, works for the town, no, works in real estate, no, Act Now member, no. As you can see, I'm member of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. They're not in a neighborhood association. Our Susie can attend 95% of the meetings, yes, can attend 100% of the critical votes, will do, you know, solicit input from their constituency, will keep their constituency informed, and has attested to no conflict of interest. So I think those are reasonable questions to ask of every person who participates and should be part of our criteria for confirming members to the group. Brooke.
Hi, Denise. I just wanted to add something. Jason and I have interviewed the 2 potential facilitators, and the select board will be deciding on that tonight. And one of the facilitator candidates pointed out to us that there's some qualitative things about folks' willingness to be collaborative and cooperative and work together. And
Great.
She offered to supply us with 3 questions that she has used in the past to vet candidates who come into these groups. And so I'm going to suggest that we include those questions that Stacy will be supplying us. And she said, whether you hire me or not, I'll give you those questions. So I think that would be useful. And one of them goes something like, it's a narrative question, like give us an example of a time when you've been involved on a side of an issue and work together with folks who disagree with you, or, you know, something. She worded it much more clearly than that, but that kind of qualitative analysis too of willingness to participate cooperatively in this effort, because I think that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Brooke. That's very helpful. And I added that to the document. Dave, your hand is up.
So, and I know you and I, Denise, talked about this earlier, but so that's going to be something, and tell me if I'm wrong, Brooke, here through you, Denise, of course. That's a question that'll be asked during a verbal interview and not necessarily on the questionnaire, correct?
Mm-hmm.
No, on the questionnaire.
So will that slow us down if we need to get those questions approved by town council?
Because we're advertising today, we're starting the advertising for the appointment process, right? So the thought process was, Brooke, that we would hopefully be able to use, and I can screen share that too. Boom. Oops, not that. Oh man. So this is the Town of Nantucket Committee Interest Form, new applicant. Have you ever attended? You know, we've all seen these as we've all had to fill them out. And the idea was to use the standard form because it has been signed off by town council, and we wanted to get started with getting people's applications in, and that the questions that from the facilitator could be asked during their application process versus them writing it down. So then that way we could get started. So I also have the timeline somewhere, but I forgot to put it up. So I will stop screen sharing while I look for it. But the, yeah, so Erica had also proposed a timeline. So Brooke, how strongly do you feel about, Peter has his hand raised, and then, but let me ask Brooke first quickly, Peter, and then I'll come back to you. How strongly do you feel about having them on the application itself?
Okay, so if we get 100 applicants and we have to interview 100 people in order to ask these questions, it seems that will take more time than asking everyone to fill it out in writing. And I mean, I realize there's no select board meeting next week. Perhaps there's a way to do this where the original form gets submitted and then there's a follow-up to every applicant who files on by that deadline with these supplemental questions, including your grid and the questions provided by the facilitator. So it's a second round, and that way we don't slow the process down. But I don't think answering all of these verbally is going to be a practical time-wise, we're never going to be able to talk to every candidate at that length.
No, probably not. Probably not.
A very good point.
And I had the timeline, I thought, from Erica.
I have it in front of me. It is committee vacancies added to select board agendas as an announcement on August 3rd and 17th. It says advertise August 1st. So obviously that's not happening. So so wherever we start the advertising, the dates roll forward by that number. So we won't be able to advertise this week anyway because the Yankee deadline. Okay. So we're talking about next week anyway. Okay. And potentially then we could maybe have this thing revised in time. If not, we do what I suggested, which is a 2-part application. And then it's advertising in the Inky for 2 weeks. If we were to start with this week's edition, it would be the 4th and the 11th with the deadline for submitting on the 26th. Peter? Sure.
Just a question. You're assuming that if we get 100 applicants, we're going to interview 100 people?
No.
That's what Brooke said. So
the process is, the select board appointment process allows everyone whose application arrives on time an opportunity to speak for a minute or two about their application. Yeah. That's how the select board appointment, if we're following select board appointment process, that's how that works.
So they will do that in front of select board?
Well, in front of the appointing body, which would be select board plus Denise and Dave.
Okay. I think if people don't qualify based on the other questions, it seems kind of silly to have them speak in addition to that.
Right. So they wouldn't be speaking until the 21st of September based on this timeline. So if we do a 2-part application, then I mean, do we want to add a process of elimination outside of what is the select board process? I mean,
it would seem to me that makes sense.
Dave?
As painful as this sounds, right? Possibly interviewing 100 people. I think that the devil is in the details here, and to remain completely open and transparent, we need to check every box and take every step in this process. Because we just really can't afford to have people discount this as a sham. I just think that we really need to take the time, and if we need to interview that many people, we need to do it. I'm concerned that there are so many interests here looking to discount our effort that we need to be careful.
Okay, then I think we should stipulate what the questions are going to be so they can either be prepared for them or decide not to participate.
Mm-hmm. Barry has his hand up, and then Brooke, I'll come back to you. Barry?
Thanks, I appreciate it. I don't know, truthfully, instead of using the committee interest form, that may be the second round of discriminating who you're going to take on board and who you don't. But the questionnaire that we came up with, which had a lot of yeses, nos, and a very simple number, that may be your pre-screening tool, because it's simple, it's easy to go through it. And I think if you tell people, okay, if you clear round 1, round 2, we start getting serious with verbiage about things. I don't know if that would be better to help you refine the field of candidates more. But I do like that form in its simplicity, and it does ask a lot of the basic questions. So I don't know how the rest of the group feels about that, but that may help trim down that number and maybe make some more sense out of it.
I mean, if someone has a financial conflict of interest in respect of an STR, then that would, as the state defines conflict of interest, right? As we have gotten from town council. So if the town council's definition for us of what conflict of interest applies in this case. So if I'm in the real estate business, and I have a lot of short-term rentals, then you are disqualified from being on the working group. It doesn't mean you can't attend the meetings. Doesn't mean that you can't have input to it. It just means you can't be part of the working group. If you have an STR though, because of the number that are here and the preponderance of people who are affected by a seasonal rental on Nantucket, my understanding from town council is that those folks are not disqualified from participating. That's my understanding. But again, I'd have town council be the final word on that rather than Denise's interpretation of what town council had said. So Brooke was first, Peter, and then I'll come back to you. Brooke?
So in the interest of moving this along, may I suggest that we do the committee interest form and your grid?
Okay.
As the application.
Okay.
That gets sent to, that becomes part of the packet to apply for,
okay,
whether it's an at-large seat or being nominated by your group.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing we need to do is give a deadline to those groups as to when their 3 nominees have to be submitted to us.
I think it should be the same as it is for the at-large members, right?
Yes, except for some of these groups may or may not, like the housing stakeholders group may or may not have a meeting before that. No, they probably will have a meeting before that deadline, so that might work. And then we follow up for everyone who submits by the 26th of August. We send them the 3 questions from the facilitator.
Okay.
And that I would hope, I don't know, perhaps the facilitator would help us evaluate the applications as well. I don't know whether that's, you know, a worthwhile thing as part of that contract.
That would be helpful
because,
to have a neutral person do that.
Yep.
Thank you, Brooke. Peter?
Okay.
Just 2 things. Number one is when you look at this chart, the only elimination questions are if you work in real estate. Essentially, there's no other elimination questions on here that somebody would say no to that would eliminate them. I don't think. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
Number 19, if you've said that you had, if you have attested to no conflict of interest and you signed the form, but if you know, you could say no to that, right?
Yeah, so there's about 2 things on there. Okay, whatever. Okay. So it's not a true elimination questionnaire. Right. And second thing is, are we going to have any sort of upfront discussion on whether corporate owners are going to be allowed to apply to be an at-large member?
I think at-large members open to anyone, because otherwise we're already culling the herd before we even go through the process. I think that's important. Whether they are successful or not is a separate question, right? And also too, how in many cases we might not even know, right? So David?
Is what's the definition of a corporate owner? Right? I mean, who do we apply that to and how do we apply it?
I think number one is it's totally held in an LLC and they're not divulging who owns it. And number two, you know, they can be in an LLC and then say who owns it. That's not that's possible. And number 2 is, you know, when a guy has a truck running around town that says he owns businesses and he has his own workmen to repair them, the houses, it's a corporate business as far as I'm concerned.
That I will agree with. I think LLCs is a way trickier situation because there's so many houses held in them that aren't even rented.
No, I'm saying it could be in an LLC, but just you should divulge who the owner is.
100% agree. Well, I mean, it's on the questionnaire. If they own one, they need to divulge that.
And if they own 15, then it's quite obvious that it's a business.
A business.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Barry, your hand was up and then it's not up. So was your question answered?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me summarize as to where I think we are. We're comfortable with the framework, with the idea that during the discussions and the handover to the actual working group and the facilitator, that the characteristics and data points that describe the uniqueness of Nantucket are clear and measurable and agreed upon. To elaborate on that a bit more. Secondly, that we will send out the standard committee interest form from the town as part of the application process and attach the spreadsheet for folks to provide additional information, which we will run by town council quite quickly to make sure we can do that. And then when we get applications back that come in by the deadline, we will then follow up with a 3-question questionnaire to say, please fill out these and send them back to us as well. On the 21st, the number of applicants will be able to speak 2 minutes as to their candidacy and why they want to be part of it. And the people who are being appointed by the different organizations, such as Nantucket Together and Act Now, will go through the same process in terms of filling out information as the at-large members and the one alternate will do. So I think that's where we got to. Is that? I'm looking at nodding heads. I see Peter nodding, Dave nodding. Barry's a picture, so it's not nodding. Brooke's nodding. So, okay. Barry's now thumbs up. Okay, and having lunch. Good. So, okay. So thank you for that. Now I will open it up. We're already 15 minutes over, obviously from the process that we had in the beginning, in terms of the technology, you know, technology 1, Denise 0. So before I turn it over, open it up for public comment, brief public comments, I'm going to ask my pre-work group members if there is any other business. Seeing none, I will open it to public comment. Folks, we will have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So if you would like to make a public comment at this point, you're welcome to do so. Raise your hand. And I am going to be quite diligent again about time limits. So please be as brief as possible. And Robin, you were first in.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just very quickly. One is, I think I didn't see it on there, but an important screening question to consider is, have you done business or had a some type of a financial incentive related to principles of, let's say, Act Now, Nantucket Together, whoever it may be. There are some very powerful, very wealthy people to consider the influence when you are selecting members at the at-large group. The other question or the other thought is that, you know, you have these 3 questions that you were going to put to potential participants, and this really relates to Barry Rector's question or his point related to the legal action by Act Now. Are you willing to commit to work through the STR work group to find solutions going forward and not undermine the work of the work group by legal action, marketing, or any other actions?
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. Kathy?
Good afternoon, Denise. I just have 2 questions, and this is more about filling out the form just to make sure I understand it. One thing would be, how would people know or answer the question about how many neighbors are STR owners? I mean, there isn't, that information is so hard to find. How would anybody know how to answer that question, for one? And the other question is, for those who would be appointed members of their groups, how would you fill out that form if you were, let's say I put my name in on Nantucket Together, but I'm also a member of a neighborhood association and other things. Would I answer yes to all of those? Or
you would. You'd answer yes to anything that's relevant to you. So.
Okay, but there was also a question like the advisory committee also has a member associated with that. And there was something earlier that said that person would represent both. Is that still the case?
No, what we had discussed, and we said, say, for example, Kathy, you become the representative for Nantucket Together. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you happen to be in the advisory committee of the non-voting taxpayers and you are a Tom Nevers Neighborhood Association member and you're on the Coastal Resiliency Committee, that's just additional data points versus you're covering all those groups. Your representation would be for the group that's assigned you to be the representative. So.
Thank you very much. That answers my questions.
Hey,
thank you,
Denise.
Kathy. Dave had his hand up first, and then Brooke, I'll come to you. Dave?
Just for Kathy, if you go in the dreaded Airbnb site, you can see all of the STRs around you for the most part, or one of those platforms, I think would help most people filling it out if they didn't already know.
Yeah, I think that question, to Dave's point, that question was more intended as, so for example, when we lived in town, I knew that 5 of the 10 houses near me had people coming and going. So I assumed that they were seasonal rentals versus year-round rentals or year-round occupants. So it was more of an observation question versus a precision question, if you will. I don't think any of us is going to go out and audit whether anyone has that number correct. Well, okay. I'm not going to. So
okay. Yeah, I know that the database that the state runs doesn't have that information. It just has a street name, and you really can't count on that. And then some people rent through real estate, some people rent through Airbnb, and some, all these different platforms. There really isn't any way to know. So I'm hoping that's not going to be like, if I get the answer wrong, then we're in trouble.
No, that's an answer you can't possibly get wrong. So it's more of an observational question. Brooke, over to you.
And perhaps that question should be worded, are you aware of short-term rentals in your neighborhood and how many, or something like that?
Okay, thank you, Brooke.
More, and then, and also I think, Kathy, just to clarify, the reason we want this information is because we want to create as balanced a work group as possible, reflecting where people live on Nantucket, all of these criteria, so that we can do our best as the appointing authority to balance the group by these different data points or pieces of information about the individual applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will, Julia.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify what Mr. Rector brought up earlier. The issue of conflict of interest was obviously thoroughly reviewed by the town and town council, and it was found that, as you know, under I think it's chapter 268, that a nonprofit like Act Now participating in this process really doesn't trigger any conflict. You think that it needs to be clarified that Act Now is not a party to any lawsuit against the town. We are supporting a lawsuit, but none of the people involved are board members of the organization either. And obviously, I appreciate that you discussed that, anyone who's going to be subject to the work group has to go through the same process of figuring out whether they do have a conflict. And I guess the only other clarification that I wanted to bring was in this question of abutters. I know that what the state provides as a registry in their public tool is not something that, as Kathy Baird pointed out, gives, let's say, a street number. But the appointment committee could certainly have access to the state database that the town has access to, which does have all of the street lists, or the street numbers, I should say, and the street names. So, that could be part of of that process, could be to look at who is next door and if there is an STR.
Thank you, Julia. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Brooke?
So that would necessitate our asking for their Nantucket residential address on the form, and then we could evaluate, rather than asking them about STRs, we could figure it out based on the database that's available. I know town council was able to determine that where I live, I do not abut a short-term rental, a registered short-term rental. So maybe that's what we evaluate rather than asking them to do it qualitatively.
That's a good idea, Brooke. Thank you. Peter?
On this, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. It doesn't ask whether you abut, it asks whether you, in your neighborhood, if you live near an STR. And I always kind of think that there's very, very few people who don't live near an STR. I mean, I live in Tom Nevers, and I can tell you within half a mile, I can tell you each house and whether they rent or don't rent. It's pretty obvious.
I mean, the idea behind the question, just to clarify, is if someone doesn't live, if the people on the committee, if no one is, because one of the feedbacks that we've gotten as individuals on this committee, on this pre-work group, is that I live near 20 of them, and they're, you know, how is that getting represented on this committee? You know, are the people who are year-round residents or are not seasonal rentals, and yet they're being affected by seasonal rentals because they live close to them. So that was the idea, is just to say, are we getting a representative population that also includes the people who are not seasonal rentals or possible year-round, whatever. So that was the idea behind it, not to be too precise on who lives near them, because to Peter's very valid point, there's probably very few people on this island that don't live within shouting distance of a seasonal rental. So, right, except for Brooke. So Brooke is the one person on this island. Let's all go to Brooke's house. It's nice and quiet there. So, okay. Peter, then Barry. Peter, you had your hand up, or is your hand down?
No, that was from before.
Okay, thank you. Barry?
Thank you. So I think it may be a good idea, if you're going to say within proximity to an STR, maybe we define it like the planning board does, where it's 300 feet separation. That usually seems to be the target that we're looking for in terms of whether that's considered a proximity or not. By most legal standards, as far as I know, for land use, 300 feet seems to be the magic number.
Why does it matter?
It matters a lot, as a matter of fact, because you may be talking legal precedent. Half a mile. If you're a half a mile from an STR, you may get people challenging what's the adversity of it. Maybe you don't like it being, you know, personally, you may not like it being there, but what effect is it having on you being that far away? So that's why I'm saying to you, just some type of criteria may help a little bit. And the other thing I want to go back to, like I said, I really want ACT now to be a part of this, but I'm not aware of anything that's come out from town council saying that there wasn't some type of conflict or problem with this. And if there is something in writing, love to see it. I would love to see it at this point, just so that, you know, there's a sense of this has been vetted through its appropriate channel. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Julia, if you do have something, could you just email it to me and I'll send it to the rest of the committee? Thank you. I think for my preference at this point, we'll go back to what Brooke has suggested, which is all applicants put their street address on the Nantucket street address, and then we just use the town registry and we can do the analysis ourselves within the town, rather than having everybody try to see what's, because, you know, my definition of 300 feet might be different than somebody else's. Just, you know, it could get confusing for people. So I think we'll just do it that way. Thank you. Rick, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Denise. Just a little bit similar to Brooke's point about the address, which I think is an excellent idea. I've often wondered that the town form doesn't specifically require to list your place of employment if you're employed. Not everybody is. And I may be asking an academic question, but is that question going to be asked, or is that information required to be submitted by any of the applicants? Thank you.
So thank you, Rick. So as of right now, we can, we'd have to check with town council if we can actually ask that. What we do ask is, do you work in real estate, in a real estate related business, and do you work for the town? So those are the two questions we ask on the more detailed questionnaire that we have. So, but we'll have to check with town council to see if we can actually ask where people work. I'm not sure that, yeah, I'm not sure that that's, yeah, thank you. Okay, Barry, is your hand up again, or is it a hand up still?
Sorry, and I have to apologize for the background noise at times. Some poor gent here was just trying to vacuum clean, and I asked him to stop, and he was kind enough. just one thing in terms of that analysis for how close STRs with things. I don't want to put plus on the spot, but they may be able to assist with that using GIS as well too.
Okay. Okay.
So
yeah.
Like I said, not to give them more work where need be, but
okay.
that might just be a help.
Okay. Thank you, Barry. All right. Anything else? Because otherwise I am going to ask for an adjournment. Rick, is your hand up again, or is it a hand up still? Okay, I'm assuming it's hand.
I'll take it down if I know how to do it.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to make sure you didn't have a follow-on question.
No, thank you. No,
okay. No. All right, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on, Madam Chair.
Yes, Barry.
Thank you. Do you want a motion to approve this final framework that we've done, as well as the forms that we've done, just so that everything is official?
I'm going to, Libby, are you still on? Yes, you are. I see you there. Do we need motions for this, or are we just a pre-work group that pulled this together, and because each body oversaw it, it's kind of good enough? Because otherwise I will just ask for a motion to adopt everything we've seen.
I thought you were just good enough, but whatever you want to do is fine.
Okay. What's the preference of the committee? Do you want to make a formal motion?
I think just for all the hard work we've done and everything, and just so it doesn't come boomerang back in an odd direction, I'm going to make that motion at this point, just to say that we're approving the work we've vetted to the moment.
Okay, thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second with the comment that subject to the amendments that we've made during this meeting. Yeah,
absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Roll call. Dave.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Denise. Aye. And I'd like to thank the pre-work group for all their hard work and getting it through to this stage. And I want to thank all of the participants who are listening in. And I can only hope that you continue to show up at all the meetings that go forward on this, because all of your voices are important to be heard, so we can get to an answer that benefits everyone and does the right thing for this community. Brooke? We
need a motion to adjourn, right?
Correct.
Still.
So I was saying thank you first.
Sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
I figured once I
had a meeting on us.
I figured once I adjourned it that nobody would care about my thank you. So yeah, I'm not doing too well today with that. I understood. So okay. So thank you, everyone. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
And it's thank you. And it's roll call. Barry.
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Libby. And take care, everyone. We'll see you again soon, I'm sure. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.